Elise Labott, who is also following this breaking news with us this day. Elise, first of all, let's talk about the implications of this very important figure who has died at 90 years old.
Well, George, obviously, Fidel Castro is loomed so large over the Cuban consciousness and certainly over the relationship between the U.S. and Cuba. But, the reopening of diplomatic ties with the U.S. that President Obama forged with Cuba was with Raul Castro, and certainly that's who the government has been working with. So obviously, I think that this is a very symbolic day, both for the Cuban people and for Cuban Americans in the United States. But I don't think it really changes anything in terms of, I don't think the U.S. expects any floodgates necessarily to open in terms of its democratic openings, political openings, everything like that. And the Raul Castro government has been working and running the government for several years. So I think the question is right now with the historic U.S. election is what is going to happen to this nascent diplomatic rapprochement between the U.S. and Cuba under President-elect Trump. President-elect Trump has said that he's kind of gives some mixed messages. Earlier on he said that he could walk back some of the openings that President Obama gave to Cuba, such as the trade reopening, such as the travel. More recently, he has said that he wants a better deal for the Cuban people, that he wants to make sure that some of these openings and some of this restoring of ties is actually trickling down to the people. There has been already reopening of trade, reopening of business. Businesses have been investing millions of dollars, U.S. businesses, in Cuba right now. I think it would be a little bit hard to undo some of that. Certainly there are some executive orders that President Trump could undo, but this opening, although it's not, certainly President Obama has tried to make it irreversible, it's not necessarily irreversible, but the train has certainly left the station, and the question is, will President-elect Trump allow this opening to continue? Will he feel that, as President Obama did, that these openings of commercial ties, of economic ties, of cultural ties will help open up the democratic space in Cuba, George?
All right, Elise Labott in Washington, thank you very much. I'd like to go straight back to Havana now. Of course, we'll get back to Elise shortly. We'll be getting reactions from around the world here on CNN, but right now, the most important reactions on the streets of Havana with our correspondent, Patrick Ottman, who joins us from the Cuban capital. Patrick, thanks for being with us, and I know you jumped into the studio when you heard the news. I want to get back to something that you were saying earlier, that as you were on your way to the studio, you were speaking to Cubans, and more often than not, you were the one breaking that news to them, giving them the information, what you'd heard from Raul Castro. What I'd like to hear from you right now, what is it like to tell a Cuban who has only ever known Fidel Castro that the man has passed away?
Well, one person that I called for reaction, I don't want to use her name, but I've known her for many years, and she hates Fidel Castro. She began to cry really under the weight of history, perhaps from relief, perhaps just from this is somebody that all Cubans feel they know. My office staff is somewhat stunned, as I call them. People were not watching the news this late at night, almost 11 o'clock when the news broke here in Havana. People were going to bed or doing other things. They were not watching this broadcast when at the very end of a celebration of one of the important events that led to the Cuban Revolution, that Raul Castro announced that his brother Fidel Castro had passed away, and we were just beginning to feel the after effects of that. But most Cubans that I've called, most Cubans that I've talked to, did not know the news, and that is somewhat stunning because over the years we've asked the Cuban government what their plan was going to be, and there was always a sense that they had a plan to blanket the airwaves, and I'm certainly sure that there will be, in the days to come, more of a sense of organization. But right now, other than that initial announcement by Raul Castro, we are not hearing the news reported widely here, and people are very stunned that perhaps the news is getting greater coverage for the moment on CNN and Cuban state TV. But this news, even though Fidel Castro was 90 years old, suffered from ill health for over a decade now. So many times when we heard he was on death's door, or false rumors that he had in fact died. Tonight, the news that we expected so long that Fidel Castro had passed away is really still stunning people. We expected it. Many of us planned for it, of course, but even for Cubans I know who wish for this, now that it's happened, there's a great sense of uncertainty. What happens next? Of course, Fidel Castro is no longer the president. He does not wield much power here, but he is such a large symbol that, of course, the most famous Cuban alive has passed away, and somebody who had such an impact, both positive and negative, on so many people's lives, is no more. And I think people will be reflecting, people will be wondering, people will be perhaps trying to provoke the government here, which wields quite a bit of authority over this island and does not take provocations lightly. So certainly in the days to come, I expect to see more police on the street, more soldiers on the streets, and the beginnings of a plan to commemorate this man's life who had such a great impact on not only on the island of Cuba where I am tonight, but of course the United States and around the world. This is somebody who, despite the fact he was a leader of a small island, not very important geopolitically, became a leader that was known around the world. You know, how many people are known by their first name of Fidel Castro was, and certainly tonight people are reeling with the news of his death here in Cuba.
CNN's dedicated correspondent to Havana, Cuba, Patrick Ottman, again live for us this hour. Patrick, I want to touch on something that you mentioned just last hour, the statement that Fidel Castro was described as immortal until proven otherwise. So this is a leader who was revered, who was loved by many, who was hated and despised by many. So what would you say the general reaction is as you point out, this news is slowly starting to get traction there in Cuba, that this former leader has died?
I think people are just stunned. There's been a silence. There's been a sense of sadness. I haven't seen too many tears. That perhaps will come later, whether they're real or people being told by the government to show their sadness at Fidel Castro's passing. You know, for many of the young people here, they never knew him as president. He's been out of power for 10 years, out of sight for 10 years, and certainly in his last years of rule here, did not lead the active life. You know, Fidel Castro, the beginning of the revolution, was a man who drove his own Jeep, shook people's hands, gave speeches all the time. Sometimes it would last for hours. So there was really no escaping Fidel Castro for many, many years. And in the last years, he was somebody who was out of sight. I recently, just a few months ago, talked to his son, and he said his son, Antonio Castro, is a photographer, takes all the pictures that we usually see of Fidel Castro. He said his father didn't want any monuments to him, that he wanted to at least to project the image of sort of a simple scholar and revolutionary. But of course, that is going to change. We expect the government here to celebrate what they call the historic leader of the revolution. And Fidel Castro, we often joke with all the rumors of his death and all the plots over the years against him, that he said, the day I die, nobody will believe it. And to a certain degree, that has been the reaction here. People have been told so long that Fidel was on death's door, that he wouldn't last much longer. And he always seemed just to survive. He was a great survivor, as many people refer to him, and he always just seemed to endure. And now that his life has ended at the age of 90, there is something of a stunned silence, a hush over the city of Havana. It's late here. I think many Cubans will wake up with the news and will certainly feel that they're living in a different Cuba.
And Patrick, I want to read this information that just came across our news desk. For Raul Castro, agreeing to not verbatim, but the following. With profound pain, I announce that Fidel Castro died November 25th at 10:29 p.m. It goes on to say that his remains will be cremated in the early hours of tomorrow, Saturday, November 26th. So that is new information coming from the present leader of Cuba.
It looks like Cuban authorities, Patrick,
Yes.
ready to move very quickly on this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they have had certainly many occasions over the years. Even when Fidel Castro fell ill, he was on death's door. He himself said that he did not expect to survive this long. It was not his wish. In his, some of his last televised appearances, he said he did not expect to live much longer, but he had an appearance just last week where he met the president of Vietnam. He, in recent months, you would see world leaders come and visit him at his home near Havana, not far from where I am right now, a heavily guarded area. And he kept this up. And recently we saw with quite a great frequency leaders coming to meet with him, talking with him. He couldn't stand at that point, but he still was fairly clear and would still engage in very lengthy conversations about